You know that feeling, right? You're staring at this massive jungle of if-else statements, and all it does is create one simple object. It's a mess. Well, today we're going to untangle that mess. We're diving into two super powerful design patterns, the factory method and the abstract factory. Let's break down what they are, how they work, and most importantly, which one you should be using and when.
Okay, let's start with a problem that I bet we've all seen probably more times than we'd like to admit. You're building something, and you need to create different kinds of objects based on some condition. It always starts out so simple, but it never, ever stays that way.
Let's imagine a notification system. First, you add an if statement for email. Easy enough. Then, your boss wants SMS. Okay, you add an else if. Then comes push notifications, and another else if. Before you know it, you've got this monster block of code. And what happens when you need to add Slack notifications or WhatsApp? This one chunk of code just gets bigger, scarier, and honestly, it becomes a total nightmare to maintain.
Now, this whole approach, it just flies right in the face of a really important design principle, the open/closed principle. The idea is that our code should be open for extension so we can add new notification types, but closed for modification. We shouldn't have to crack open this core logic and risk breaking everything every time we add a feature. So how do we actually do this the right way?
So how do we get out of this conditional logic trap? Well, this leads us to our first hero of the day, the factory method pattern. Instead of having one central place making all the decisions, this pattern lets us hand off that responsibility, cleaning up our code in a really elegant way.
The big idea here is all about delegation. Your main code doesn't need to know how to build every single type of notification. That's not its job. Instead, we push that decision down to specialized subclasses. Your main code just says, hey, I need a notification, and the right subclass factory handles all the messy details. Suddenly, your client code is free. It doesn't care about the concrete implementation anymore.
So how do you actually do this? Well, it's a four-step process. First, all your products, the email, the SMS, they all agree to follow the same contract, a notification interface. Then you build out your concrete classes for each one. Now, here's where the magic happens. You define an abstract creator with a factory method. And finally, you build concrete creators, like an email creator or an SMS creator, and each one knows how to build exactly one thing. And just like that, you've decoupled your client code.
And the payoff here is huge. Your code is suddenly so much cleaner. Need to add Slack notifications? No problem. You just create two new classes, Slack Notification and Slack Creator. You never, ever have to touch that original tangled mess of if statements again. Your whole system just became more flexible, easier to scale, and way, way easier to test.
The factory method is awesome for creating one type of object at a time. But what happens when the requirements get a little bit trickier? What if we need to create not just a single object, but a whole family of related objects that all have to play nicely together?
Here's a classic example. Let's say your app now needs to support different UI themes. Think light mode and dark mode. Now, this isn't about creating just one little thing, like a button. It's about creating an entire, consistent look and feel.
For each theme, you need a whole set of matching components. For your light theme, you need a light button, a light checkbox, a light dialog, and for the dark theme, you need the dark equivalent of all of those. The absolute last thing you want is for your app to look like it got dressed in the dark, with a light button showing up inside a dark dialog. You need consistency across the whole family.
And this is where the factory method starts to struggle a bit. It's designed to produce one product. But here, we need to coordinate the creation of multiple related products. So how can we possibly guarantee that we get a full, compatible set of UI components every single time?
This is where we need to bring in the big guns. And that brings us to our second pattern, the abstract factory. This pattern is built from the ground up to solve this exact problem, creating entire families of related objects and making sure they work together perfectly.
You know, the best way to wrap your head around this is to stop thinking about a factory that makes products and start thinking about a factory that makes other factories. It's like a super factory. It's a higher level of abstraction that decides which entire toolkit you're going to use.
So what you do is you define a single UI factory interface. Then you create a light theme factory that knows how to create light buttons and light dialogues. And you create a dark theme factory for all the dark versions. Now, your client code doesn't ask for a light button specifically. It just goes to the current factory and says, hey, give me a button. And it gets the right one for the theme every time. That's how you guarantee consistency.
All right, so we've got two really powerful patterns on the table. How in the world do you decide which one to use?
Let's put them side by side and make it super clear.
Let's just boil it right down. The factory method is all about one thing: subclasses overriding a single method to create an object. It's focused, it's singular. The abstract factory, on the other hand, is a much broader contract. It's an interface for a whole group of factory methods, like a create button method and a create dialog method, all living together under one roof.
Another really helpful way to think about this is inheritance versus composition. The factory method is classic inheritance. You make a new subclass to change the kind of product you're creating. But the abstract factory, that typically uses composition. It's like it bundles a set of related factory methods together into one convenient toolbox.
So if you remember one thing, let it be this. Are you creating different versions of a single thing? Like maybe different kinds of burgers, cheeseburger, veggie burger. Use the factory method. But are you creating a whole family of different things that have to match? Like a complete UI toolkit for Windows versus one for Mac? That, my friends, is a job for the abstract factory.
So now I want you to think about your own projects. Where is that one if-else block that just keeps getting longer and longer? Where is object creation getting totally out of hand? I bet there's a perfect spot where one of these factory patterns could be a total game changer for your codebase. Applying them really can make all the difference. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.